What is going on, YouTube? Sciz1 here. I am back after far too long. I apologize about the lapse in streams, but you know what we're doing. I put it in the title today. What we're doing. Um, I'm just excited to be back and being able to do a bit of a stream again. I'm gonna head over to the stream here on my phone. See who's popping by. I'm expecting sort of a quiet stream today since it's been a little while since I've streamed historically. It's usually a quiet stream when I take any amount of leave from my regular streaming schedule. But that being said, I want to do this stream as a little bit of a real-time sort of process video outlining the way I do things. I know the way I go through my process of creating specifically a graffiti-oriented piece is a little bit different than a lot of other artists. The way I do things takes a lot longer than a lot of other artists. A lot of other artists get things down to a type of process where it's almost like they can manufacture a piece, and they do that every single time. My process is much less refined, which of course means it's going to take longer. But that being said, I feel like the way I do things is certainly a way that gives me the best opportunity to make each piece the best that it could be, as barring I make ridiculous mistakes, but I always seem to end up doing that. But anyway, I'm gonna show you guys, if you guys saw my Instagram, I just posted this piece. This is just an Sciz that I was doing. Oh, look at all you guys in here. Tonsa, what's going on? Arisker, Juan, what's going on, brother? Lukey, Ignacio, what's up? Jason. So, yeah, so this is the one I just posted on Instagram. I wanted to show this one specifically in the stream as well, because I would show you guys the one on this page, but it's going to be in a video, so I don't want to show you guys that one yet. But I want to show this one specifically because I feel like it's a lot better than some of my ones in the past. This is what I'm going to be working on today. It's a Wild Style S. I just, every now and then I'm in the mood to just go all out on one letter, and that usually ends up being the letter S. But in terms of this piece, I don't know, I wasn't too happy with it, but I wanted to show you some of the stuff in my, like, in the previous parts of my book here. You can see, like, this piece is one of my, I think it's one of the better ones in this book. So I was clearly doing some okay work for relative to what I usually do at maybe this point in the book, a third of the way through. And then after that, there's tons of stuff in here, well after that, that is like, trying to find some good examples of it, that is like not really good at all, like this, and all these pieces. This book is roughly in chronological order. Like this wasn't that great. But my point is, you can see how, like, earlier in the book I did some good stuff compared to what I usually do. Later in the book, even later in time, I did some stuff that isn't as great. And then also, now I'm sort of coming back into form a little bit, as it would be called in, like, a sport environment. And I just want to bring that up because so much of art is a lot of times just psychology, and it's just sort of what mind frame you're in. You're going to be able to put down some better work if you're just willing to analyze it a little bit, if you're in the right mind frame to just put a little bit more effort into the structure and the analysis of what you're doing a little bit. I find that's usually really one of the only things that makes the biggest difference in piecing and whatnot. But anyway, today I went ahead and did most of the initial sort of sketching out / design portion of this, just because usually my sketching out part of the process, I just use a pencil for this. It's obviously the stuff that takes the longest, because I just put 10 lines down, erase 9 of them, and it's just very slow, very tedious. Takes the most thought for me, should take the most thought for anyone, this stage of the process, of course. So I did most of that. I left a little bit of it. I'm gonna finish sort of one of the like tails up here of the S. Show you guys sort of a little bit of how I what I look like sketching out an initial design a little bit with that, and then of course I'll start the the lines, just solidifying them with marker, pen, whatever. Of course, I'm not going to be able to do the whole thing in the stream today, especially as I was saying, I mean, the way I work is incredibly slow, which I apologize for, but I like to make sure I'm doing everything very precise. I'm a very technical artist. I'm much more technical than creative. But yeah, I gotta see what you guys are asking me here. Arisker, the name Scam it's a good name. I mean, in terms of letters, like, those are good letters to work with. I know there's a couple of fairly famous scams that have that name, though. Tansa, thank you. Oh, Juan, I'm stealing you from another live stream. I'm flattered. Jason, your question, yeah, I do. Usually, if people order commission work from me, the only option I give for payment is through PayPal, just because it's secure for someone sending money. It's also secure for it's not like through the mail, like you just get the money online, obviously. And also I like using PayPal for commissions and whatever, because if for whatever reason people aren't happy with it or whatever, or I shouldn't say not happy, just I say, when people ask that, I say I use PayPal, 1, because it's secure, 2, because if you have a problem, you can dispute it, launch a dispute or whatever with PayPal. So it's safe for the buyer and the seller. But yeah, I use PayPal, Jason. Hey, Nico, what's going on? Arisker, no, my voice is just weird. It's oh, how can I describe it? I shouldn't need to describe it. You guys hear it. It sounds worse on camera too, to be honest. But no, that's just how I sound. Urban, you broke your leg. Ooh. Man, rest that. Yeah, especially if you're younger, bones will heal fast. I've never broken anything, but I know a lot of people. I've been active in a lot of sports for a long time, so I've experienced my fair share of people breaking stuff. Official, what's going on? Arisker, you have a good question here. What do your parents think about your graph? I don't really... sorry. I've never felt that they really understand what it is. I'm really one of the only, if not the only, artist in my family, or the only person who's sort of more seriously devoted a lot of time and effort into being oriented, having artistically oriented goals, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, that being said, it's not like I grew up in a household where art was something that was understood and taught to me. I more had to go out and learn about it in general. So I don't really get the feeling that my parents really understand too much about art in general, or what it is to be making art, why people make art, that sort of thing, what people's motivations are to make art. So it's sort of hard to answer, like, what do they think about it, because they're thinking from, I hate to say it, but sort of like an ignorant point of view about it, which isn't their fault, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I don't feel that they really understand what I do. I mean, they're supportive about it, if that's what you're asking. I also don't think they would be as supportive about it if it were something getting me into trouble or anything, obviously. That's probably the best I can answer that question, really. It's a good one. I know, Lukey, I'm sorry. I'm starting, I swear. Yeah, but to be honest though, if there's one area where I never rush on a piece, it's the design stage. Just because that's really where there's the most to pay attention to. Like, that's where you need to get all your proportions down, make sure everything is going to look like it belongs, which oftentimes is really difficult to do, and the more crap you add to it in terms of connectors and stuff like that, the harder it is too. So I apologize, but I do feel that it is a little bit necessary. And of course, I gotta catch up with all my peeps. I gotta talk to you guys. I haven't had the chance to have a good conversation with any of y'all in a month and a half or so. So it's gonna be a little slow today. Yeah. Something I should mention sort of about my process is, you can tell I'm very terrible at proportions. I meant for this to fit on one page. You would think one letter would be able to fit on one page, but I screwed that up. Something I do is I'll just take half pieces of paper, tape them here to the back, and if you need something to make sure you can work on this part of the page running off the page, I usually just fold cardboard until it's about the same height as the rest of the stack of paper there. Work on it that way. It's usually a good way to do things. If you guys have trouble like me with proportions and you end up always changing stuff like that, that might help you. But I would recommend just learning how to do proportions better than I can, rather than finding a solution like that. Yeah. I find one of the hardest things too when I'm sketching this stuff out is making sure I'm keeping the same amounts of negative space between different connectors and letters and that sort of thing. Because if you ever end up with one or two spots where there's just a horrendous amount of space, it'll really end up being like a negative focal point at the end of the piece. So it's really important to weed out that kind of stuff. Might leave it at that. I don't know, there's a big space in there, which is what I'm talking about with the negative space, right? Don't know. Sometimes you just gotta sit and think about what would look good in there. I'm gonna catch up here, sorry. Michael, for like a 10 by 20, sort of depends. Oh, how big is that? That's like this by that. If you email me or send me a message on Instagram, I can quote you for that. Sort of depends on where you are, just for shipping as well. So I don't want to throw out any numbers that are drastically wrong, just depending on location. Nico, you have a question about canvases. Ask away. Official Semtex, quality or quantity. It depends on who you are, I guess. For me, you can tell I'm a very technical writer. I prefer not necessarily quality, but I prefer that everything I put down, put out anywhere on the street, anywhere else, I want it all to represent me well. I don't want to be, I don't want to have anything that makes me look bad out anywhere. So I would say quantity up to the point that you can manage it and make it look good. Not just quantity for quantity's sake, quantity because you can handle a quantity that large. Why is there like Christmas? I don't understand why all of a sudden Epidemic Sound decided to put Christmas rap / beats on their stuff. Don't want to hear Christmas music. That being said, though, I understand people who say should always be quantity. That's how graffiti started. It wasn't about quality. That's sort of something a little further along in the evolution of graph. So you can't be mad at anyone for saying quantity, I don't think, or at least you shouldn't be. But I think it's also a perfectly acceptable answer for people to say quality. Michael, that sounds good. Yeah, whenever you got time or whatever else, give me a shout. I'm usually quick-ish to respond. I at least try and be. If you don't have my Instagram, it is what I am throwing in the chat right now. Same as my YouTube, at Sciz Graffiti. I do think, official, that it is important to have a balance between the two, not just quantity, not just quality. I think as someone, as a writer in general, people should understand, they should be out to understand the viewpoint of quantity at least, because I think when you sort of understand that mentality, you've learned a lot about sort of the origins of graph, really. And I think it's important as any, like, I'm I certainly wasn't around in the 70s, I'll say that. But, so as someone who would be labeled by most writers as a newer generation writer, I still think it's important for me to be, or at least try and learn a little bit about the history of what we love to do here. I think that's super important. So the way I'm doing these first lines is I'm doing the smallest ones first. Sort of a strange way to do it, but again, that is what I think will make it look best. So I'm using a 0.1 millimeter for this. These lines are a little bit specific, so if I'm a little bit silent for a couple of them, it's just because I gotta concentrate. I haven't used these little bars in a little while. I remember way back, I first saw them being used in a video by Shiva, and then after that video came out, I guess, was when just everyone started using them. They became, I think, I would say it's fair to say they became almost mainstream because of the video Shiva made where he pointed out that he uses them. I don't know. So I guess that's a little, that little sort of filler that I use is sort of a bite from him. So if you guys are liking this format of real-time sketch stream, I'm totally willing to show more of this piece when it's closer to finished, of course. Don't want to be using the 0.1 for too many things here. If you guys are in Canada, which I know most of you aren't, happy Thanksgiving. Our Thanksgiving is in October. I know American Thanksgiving is November. But tomorrow for us is Thanksgiving Monday here in good old Canada. Just a Kid T, what's going on? 2 a.m. in your country, oh my gosh. That means you're in, like, Oceania-ish. Like, Asia or Oceania, I'm gonna guess. Which means you're probably from a country that that I would like to go see. Or have seen. Dude. Nico, you're asking a question that I have no idea about. If anyone else in the chat knows a better answer than I can give about Nico's question, what would be a good canvas block for Molotow and Posca markers? Oh, do you mean like a oh, what's it called? Like a varnish. I use I honestly, the place I get varnish is like just I go to Michael's and get whatever there. No, I don't. I use Liquitex varnish. There's probably better varnishes, but I use the Liquitex varnish. And it works nicely with Molotow and all that. Like, it won't screw with the Molotow. Or Posca, probably. I don't know. I've never used Posca. But I have used that varnish with even Sharpie paint markers, which are water-based, and no problems there either. So I would expect that the Liquitex varnish doesn't react with pretty much anything, which it shouldn't. It's a varnish. But you gotta be careful how you apply varnishes, of course. Like, do it just a layer at a time. Make sure you leave it for ideally a few days to dry in between coats, if you're not in a hurry to move the canvas anywhere. Like, even when I'm selling canvases, I say they come varnished, if people want that. And I do make sure I tell them, though, if you want it varnished, it'll take a couple days longer, just because I gotta make sure the layers of varnish are good before I send it anywhere, before I finish other coats of varnish. So those are... So I just used the 0.1 millimeter. That's a 0.1 millimeter pilot marker. Most of you, if you've seen my streams, you've seen me use these markers several times. So I use the 0.1 millimeter for basically the smallest lines that I want to be the thinnest. I'm now using a 0.3 millimeter marker for the lines that are a little bit bigger. So the 0.3 is going to be me going, outlining a few of the connectors in the piece, basically some of the smaller connectors, and then after that I have a 0.8 millimeter for some of the biggest lines, and I'll probably double outline a lot of the biggest lines to make sure they're big enough. So you can tell there aren't very many places where you need the 0.1. There really shouldn't be. I mean, even on something this wild, and you gotta say it's a pretty wild letter, there aren't that many places you need the 0.1. Official, what are your thoughts about the German graffiti scene? Germany has a ton of great stuff. A lot of great writers. I mean, obviously Molotow being German company, you know that there's been a scene there for long enough that some kids who got into graffiti at a young age are now at the age where they're making companies like that. So you can tell Germany has a long history in graffiti. If you've ever been to Germany, which I haven't, I know people that have. If you've ever been there, though, you know there's huge amounts of graph and huge amounts of really, really good graph, in my opinion. Yeah, I think Germany's always, or at least for a long, long time, been one of those countries that's just been known to have a great scene. I've never heard anyone speak of Germany in a not good way when it comes to graph. It's pretty mutually understood between everyone that Germany has been at it for a while. So with this 0.3, I'm pressing a little harder too. The 0.1, you really want to just get your little tiny lines in and get the marker off the damn page so it doesn't bleed at all, whereas the 0.3, I can, you know, press a little harder when I want maybe a 0.4 line, something like that. I believe the decimal size that Pilot labels these markers as, it just refers to the tip size, like the nib size. So I mean, of course, it might put down a line that's a little bit different than that, especially depending on what kind of paper you're working on, because different papers are going to bleed differently. Using the 0.1 again to sharpen this line up. That's what those 0.1s are really nice for. I'm always happy to have the 0.1 when I gotta do something like that. Just gonna turn this. If my hands were steadier, I would have done that in one line, but they're not. And they're never going to be. I mean, you can work on that sort of thing, and believe me, I do, but you gotta figure out how is best for you to sketch, and straight, continuous lines are gonna look the sharpest, but they take a long time to develop. But they'll definitely look better than just doing choppy lines all the time. Juan, have a good one. I appreciate you stopping by. I thought it was going to be a totally dead stream today since it's been... You guys know how long it's been since I've streamed, so I appreciate everyone stopping by, everyone who has stopped by. So thank you, Juan. Basically, if you guys... I don't know quite when I'm going to do the next stream for this, but if you guys are interested in seeing the next stream, where I do a bit more of this piece after today, if you want, you can turn the notifications on your phone for my streams, if you can do it that way, I guess. Or follow me on Instagram, and I will post there when my next stream is, but I'll post it like 5 minutes before, being like, hey, I'm gonna do a stream. It's pretty much the best I can do in terms of scheduling, or letting people know when it's gonna happen. At some point I'll be back on a regular streaming schedule, but I don't want to say when, because I don't know. So I'm thickening this line up a little bit, specifically. For anyone who doesn't understand why I'm doing that, it's just because, being that this is a bigger chunk of line and that it's sort of more of a main part of the piece, you want to draw attention to it a little bit more, and therefore make it a little bit bigger, and you'll have accomplished that fairly nicely, to be honest. So that's why I do that. Officially, you're in Germany. That's awesome. A friend of mine's over there doing a work thing, actually. Just went over a few days ago, so I have yet to ask him how he's liking it, but I think he's liking it a lot. He lives in a very small town in Germany, apparently. So I won't even try and tell you where it is. I mean, more because I don't know the name of it, and also could not pronounce it, but... So I'm going to switch to the 0.1 here because this, I would like it to come to a nice point. A nice cut, sort of. If you also want to make a line marginally thicker, and you have good coordination, you can do that with a 0.1. I mean, I didn't start using these 0.1s or 0.3s until like very recently. So as someone, like, when I was a beginner, if I was trying to use this stuff, I would have had no reason to be, no business at all trying to use sizes of marker that are that small and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't recommend everyone use them, and I mean, they're not, certainly not necessary in any capacity for anyone to use. Just if you want to make something sort of more technical, they can be useful. Oops, almost threw my phone off the desk indirectly. One thing I like about these pilot markers too is that the tip is very, it's a very hard tip, so if you angle it correctly, you can get some very, like, lines much thinner than the size labeled on the actual tip. The cap, I mean. That's why one of the reasons I always say just get to know whatever product you are using and stick with that. It doesn't really matter how high quality the markers are you're using, it matters how well you know how to use it. And you'll be able to create the best stuff, or the cleanest stuff, with markers you know how to use, not ones that are the most expensive. So always just buy within your budget and get used to whatever. That being said, when you're ready to move up to some more expensive things, if you're ready, you'll learn to appreciate them. Learn to appreciate the sort of more subtle things that they can do that other markers can't. So again, since this sort of spiral is actually sort of related to the main part of the letter S, I'm thickening it so it's a very directional line, right? Like it flows this way, so does this. The main sort of, almost all the lines are really flowing towards the middle, almost like a big bow tie. So it's important that you emphasize some of the more main lines that flow that way, so that you are promoting the directional flow of the piece to the viewer, I guess, is sort of the best way I can describe that, if hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. Whatever this tune is, I'm downloading it. I like it. Yes. Oh, of course it's going to open my iTunes now. We don't need that open. This is actually a sick little beat. Might use it in a video. So sometimes when you're in the middle of outlining a piece like this, it looks really weird to have certain lines super thick like this and not others. But by the end of the piece, you should have, if you did it right, all the important lines will be the right thickness and it'll balance out the piece. So it's a little bit strange visually sometimes when you're working like that, but it does work out. Part of what takes longer about this method is switching between your markers so much. From Russia. Hey Mark, what's going on? You are, Russia is the biggest country in the world. I live in the second biggest country in the world. That is Canada, so hello from Canada to you. Yeah, official, I'm just doing black and white. This whole book pretty much is every single thing except for two things in it is black and white. So sticking with that theme. And the reason I do that, which I've explained long ago in other streams, is because black and white allows you to, or it should anyway, allow you to focus a little bit more on the actual structure of the letters, because the structure, in my opinion, is far more crucial to have down than a color scheme is. Colors are important, of course, but you can have good structure with bad colors and still have a piece that looks semi-decent, whereas you can't have, if you have good colors with a bad structure, it's just going to look like crap no matter what. So this book for me is really a practice book, and I try and focus a lot on the structure more and the technical aspect of building and designing a piece in it. I focus on that a lot more than I focus on color schemes in this book. Color schemes are important. They're just not what I focus on in this specific book. Partly because I feel that my color schemes need less work than my structural stuff. Generally, I have a pretty natural eye for what colors go good together and stuff, whereas it's a lot harder to have an idea of what shapes are going to go good together, especially when they get complex. I think everyone should be more concerned about structure than colors. In terms of if they want to develop in practice. As a general rule, of course, in a piece, you're going to want some good colors. Guess I'll just join that up. This line isn't super nice, so I just screwed that up. It is one I want to make thicker, though. Yeah. That's fine, that's fine. That's a thing, too. If you make a line that is sort of jittery, you don't necessarily want to make it thicker. Like, you don't want to force the promotion of a line to a more important line than it is, if it's not a directional line, and it's a very small part of the letter of the piece. You don't necessarily want to make it thicker at all. Oh, Juan, you back. Yeah, I don't know if Mark is a Russian name. I would tend to think it isn't, but I don't know anything about Russian culture.